It's because it's a Thursday, Bert, not a Monday. We're not angry that it's Monday.
It's Eve of Friday. And
True.
some people say the weekend begins on Thursday night.
In Chelsea, it does.
All right, you're all good to go.
Great.
What's a
Good
weekend?
evening, everybody. My name is Jeffrey LaFrancois. I'm chair of Community Board 4, and I'm calling to order the executive committee meeting of Board 4 this evening, our October meeting. And we're going to make a few revisions to the agenda tonight, taking item 2 first, and we'll follow with item 1. And it's all been updated. Item 3 is tabled, so going to dive right in here. You reviewed a letter of determination based on the status of the various executive orders that are allowing us to meet virtually and in compliance with the open meetings law. That letter reflects specifically 2 of the executive orders that exist at the city level. There is no longer an executive order at the state level allowing us to meet virtually. So these are both municipal executive orders by the mayor. The letter before you lists COVID and monkeypox. There's actually one out there for polio also. So the key question to the committee, and I frankly hope you'll respect the fact that this shouldn't take a lot of time in terms of discussion, as we've discussed this almost every month for the past year. Do we want to list those 2 bullets in this letter, or do we want to say any executive order that allows us to meet virtually shall apply?
B.
Thank you, Dale. Is there sort of straw poll, and then we can turn that? Okay.
Yes.
So Jesse, that's based on, sort of makes sense of what we talked about today, right?
Yeah, so we're saying we're removing the specific executive orders, and we're just saying basically any state or city municipality executive order will allow us, we'll determine to meet virtually with that. I just need a vote, and then that's all good.
Can I have a motion? Christine, is there a second? Alan, thank you. Any objections? Abstention? Present, not eligible? Okay, thank you, everybody. With that, we next go to the budget, to our second vice chair, Leslie Murphy, to talk through our statement of district needs and the budget request meeting, or the status of the budget requests.
Great. So as you all know, it's that lovely time of year where we hand in our statement of district needs to the city and the related agencies. So I am very happy to present to you this year's offering of our statement of district needs. As you guys know, each committee reviewed their issues and asks over the past year and actually combined them with past unfulfilled asks. And along with the committees, the budget task force, as you know, prioritized those financial asks, which really results in the list that you have now that Jesse sent out. So you should have 2 lists, right, Jesse? One is the actual list from 1, 2, 3, all the way down for both capital and expense. And the second, which many of you actually worked on, is the statement of district needs, the narrative, the opening narrative, the trends, the top 3 priorities, and then the priorities for each category, which somewhat loosely relates to the committees. If you have seen it or have read it, then there might not be any surprises. Like last year, we sent out a survey to residents and stakeholders in our district to see what was important to them. And the results, on cue, my dog, sorry. And the results, along with what our board has collectively seen and heard and has been engaged with over the past year, really formed our top priorities and our narrative. So number 1, I don't think should be any surprise, is public safety. Number 2 is affordability and affordable housing. And number 3 is, in the survey, quality of life, but also with sanitation. That's how the committee, the budget task force prioritized. If anyone is interested, I think Jesse, we have the survey results, but they're still raw, right? They're going to be.
Yeah, we're working on getting those cleaned up, but yeah, I mean, we can certainly share it around if wanted.
Okay. listen, it was a group of about 230 people, so I don't think it's really the best of overall of our whole district, but it just so happens that everything that everyone pretty much said in the survey, as I was not only looking at the results, but reading down the comments, is pretty consistent with what we have been hearing all year round at our different committees. As far as the number one, number two, number three, public safety was number one far and away. I mean, nothing even touched it. And then next to that, if you go down to two, it was affordability, affordable housing. And then it dropped off pretty severely. So next was quality of life and sanitation. So that's what we listed. We threaded our narrative with. And really, it wasn't dissimilar from our priorities from last year. So if you had a chance to look, we also addressed longstanding effects on our neighborhoods from COVID, which also played into our priorities, and the newfound situation of migrants being both housed and serviced here in the district. And we had this year, I guess not unlike other years, but it seemed a little more this year, we had a few topics that crisscrossed our committees. So that bolstered the ask, which is reflected in the priority list. So again, as we all know, I think we all know, though it is a priority list in total, each ask will go to the specific agency. So it will be prioritized regardless of where it is on the overall list. It will be prioritized in order to the specific agency. So if anyone has any, and I want to thank the budget task force. This is my first time chairing the budget task force, so they really were great, helping like form the narrative. And by the way, you guys have told me, but I didn't know Jesse is like a magic man. He like just writes stuff and like does everything. So he was great. But if you have any questions or anything, a lot of the committee chairs are here as well, representatives from the task force, and they can probably answer. Jesse, go ahead.
I'm worried that Jesse's hand is the first one up, Leslie, after you just
I
gave
know.
him
Did I already? Am I getting?
Well, I think you wanted just to raise, we did discuss at the budget task force about at least bringing up the third item on our capital list, which is the NYPD capital.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Oh gosh. Yes. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. So that's a big one. I appreciate that. Our third, our ask on our capital. So when the budget task force got together over 2 meetings, our latest one the other night, we really took into consideration survey results, comments, and merged them with what we heard over the past year and what we see and know. So this was, I guess, an ask through a letter for a while ago, but it is, so it's really a constant ask, but the budget task force decided to prioritize in our capital requests and reignite the ask for a satellite police station outpost to be more in line with where our population is growing. Instead of being so spread across, I know that's a big problem. We have written in the statement of district needs and also in the priority list, well, it might not be on the priorities, it's definitely in the statement of district needs, that it should be near the Hudson Yards area, which is what was originally talked about, just because of the lack of a police outpost there. So this is not an additional police precinct. This is more what we're asking for efficiency purposes. And we incorporated that to be consistent with what we're seeing on the ground. Jesse, thank you so much for reminding me. I appreciate that.
And just to piggyback on that coincides with the existing expense requests that we did last year. So we combined the 2 expense requests that were NYPD related into the document, you'll see. But so those go hand in hand.
Yeah. So our expense, if you see it, and if you remember, we had our first expense last year was homeless services, which though they said that it was granted, we are keeping it up there. A, to show, to let everyone know it's a priority, and B, we don't think it's sufficient, either in funding or in action. The other two expense asks last year were more foot patrol with the NYPD and more visibility in the community, not just in the cars. I mean, we had lengthy discussions about this driving around. And the third was specifically from then the Social and Racial Justice Task Force about more community engagement, community activities. What we did, instead of doing 1, 2, 3, we did 1 the same with the homeless outreach ask, and then 2 and 3 we combined. And we kind of, we like massage the narrative a little bit to make that one big ask.
So, Joe, your hand was up before. I'm not sure if it's on this topic specifically, but we'll go to you.
Yeah, so are we talking just capital right now or capital expense together?
I'm just giving, oh, sorry.
Sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
No, I was just giving a narrative of the overall. We haven't gotten to the list yet. It was just, this is overall, like kind of what framed our introduction, our narrative, and also the sub narratives for each of the committees.
So I think just on the NYPD piece, we have to be more specific on the ask. It just says a satellite something. I don't know if that's the right term, but it should be acquire a location for, because that's the action the capital budget would take, right? And then is it really, I go to Jeffrey or Jesse, is the word satellite the proper, I want to get language that just speaks in the.
Well, Joe, we debated terminology. We landed on satellite because auxiliary was another term, but we know that auxiliary police are actually an entity
thing
that exists. Yeah. I don't know of a precinct that has a satellite location. So this is a distinct new ask, basically for the 10th.
Well, and we haven't said that either.
Jesse, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say I can work on finding the right language. I don't know again, Jeffrey might be right. I don't know if there is existing language for it, but we will work on finding. We just chose satellite because we had gone back and forth about auxiliary, and we did not want to confuse things around auxiliary. So that's
auxiliary police versus
was not
satellite location. Very specific that it's a part of the precinct still.
And Joe, do you have any suggested language?
I definitely think we have to say acquire a location, because that's the budget ask, and then for the 10th precinct. So somewhere it's in there, like it's clear that it's that satellite, acquiring a location for a satellite of the 10th precinct. So it's very specific. Otherwise it's too general for them. That's all.
Marty?
Yeah, I agree. When you use the word satellite, that's not my question. When you use the word satellite, put a parenthesis and define it. That way you can get out of trouble and you don't have to do too much looking. And you've just defined it. I looked at I'm always amazed at this document. I have to say that first. I know you bust your heads to deal with this. At the end of the lists, what does CS mean?
So that means continuing support. So either there's some sort of response, it's a previous ask. We don't think it's been totally fulfilled, or it's been halfway promised, or there's a big umbrella actually what it could mean, but we think it's important enough to keep an eye on it, type of thing. Like keep an eye on it, make sure they're getting it done. We don't want to lose it entirely until the project is finished.
Thank you. I hadn't a clue, and my final comment, I was very glad to see that Shore Power made it as high up on the list as it got.
Thanks, Marty. Katie?
Thanks. And I haven't had a chance to read through the whole thing, so I may have missed it. But following up on what you just said, Leslie, it sounds like you're saying that the asks from last year, when we had talked about, for example, foot patrols and things, you're saying you sort of combined it into this ask, but the language seems to be specifically, and maybe it's because it's in the capital part, but the language seems to be only about a location for more police officers.
That's you're talking. That's the the location is the capital,
Uh-huh.
that's the expense. If you go to the expense sheet, it's a different sheet.
Okay,
You'll see number 2 is the same expense we had last year. And the language is combined. The language didn't really change much. It's changed for editing purposes to shorten, but not for meaning. Do you see the, I'm
Okay.
sorry, do you see?
yeah,
so if
yeah,
you go in
I'm in the
Dropbox,
expense
there's
one
2.
now. Yeah,
Yeah. So you're right. It has nothing to do with the capital ask of the satellite auxiliary acquire location ask.
okay,
It's a separate expense ask.
okay. Okay, all right, okay, I'll take a look at it. It seems like the changing in the wording in number 2, like the very last sentence still talks about the importance of, foot patrols and community police relations. But the specific ask seems like, again, even under expense, that it's about more policing. And we were talking,
This is the exact language. I literally cut and paste from last year.
okay, so it didn't change, you're saying? I thought you said that it had changed from
We
last year.
combined it. But the language didn't, this is the exact language we used last year. I mean,
Okay,
I'm
okay.
open,
I
if
think
anyone
what
wants
it's
to change
been,
it.
also, there was discussion around specifying program spend and whether or not it should just broadly say police, or if we should focus on the social work as first responder type of thing, which is a program that exists. Of course, I sent the name the other night and I forget the name of it. But I think are we thinking of, were we going to include that name, Leslie, to make sure that it's encompassing of the type of response we're looking for, that it's not just more police, but it's more police type services that include the
I thought that was a
social worker
separate,
as first
I
responder.
thought I would do that. I thought it was decided that was a totally different, this is, because this goes to NYPD as far as specifically foot patrol and community engagement, right? The other is a separate program that if we want funding for, we should ask for funding for that particular program. If we say we want police to do this, this, and this, we could do that, but now we're getting into more of a, not a specific budget ask. But I agree with you, Jeffrey. If we should add it somewhere, but not,
I guess I thought that
would
was
suggest not in the ask for a specific foot patrol. I didn't, that I didn't think was the language. Jesse, do you?
I would say, I mean, if it's under NYPD, we can include it into this ask. It's, again, we'll have to say, including such programs as, I think if we want to do that, then we can do that. I will say the broader the request, right, the easier for them to say
It's fulfilled.
yeah, or well, we gotta study it, or whatever.
I think
That's,
I guess
that's
I
my
think
only-
that
I'm not opposed to it. I just want to
Yeah,
say.
me too. I think we should include it, but it should be its own ask, maybe, right?
Okay.
and I
And
think
then
that
Leslie, can you just remind me what the response was to this expense request last year?
I
Give me a
think it
moment.
was,
Why don't you keep on going, and I'll find, and I will.
yeah, I think it was,
Perfect.
cannot be funded at this time, but,
Well, I'll find it.
okay,
Okay.
he'll
We have
find the
other,
exact
we have other
language.
hands up. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, Jeffrey, did you
Paul?
want to follow up on that? Or,
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
just the factor of the inclusive language around not just sort of straight policing was we discussed this at budget task force, at length, the optics of just saying more police versus specifying a program, because I think there's universal agreement that our police and prisons should not become mental health institutions, that there is programs for the way that we are handling folks that is not necessarily crime related. And there's programs for that. And so we should be calling that out accordingly. It's a program through the police department. And so it just, the idea of more police wasn't our only thrust.
I agree with you. I would counter, our ask is not for more police. Just to be clear, so everyone, it's recorded, public knows, our ask is not for more police. Our ask is to get their tushies out of their cars.
It's the type of patrol.
It's the type of policing.
A different type of policing. Right.
Exactly.
Yes, it's the
Yeah,
type of
exactly.
policing.
Yeah.
I just want to make it clear, just so, we're on the record
Absolutely.
as we're consistent with what our asks have been
Yeah.
in the past and throughout the year. But
Yeah.
Jeffrey, if you want, we could definitely 100% include language. And I'm sure we would be open to, if it's important enough, to make it a specific ask, but that's up to you guys.
Let's keep this going a little bit. Let's go to Paul and then we'll go to Dale. Paul?
Thanks, everybody. This is a reminder of why I'm so happy I'm not on the budget task force. These documents are overwhelming, and the amount of work that you all put into this is astounding. I'm noticing a trend, though, that I feel like I mentioned this last year too, is that the way we list our priorities and then the way we actually list our capital and expense priorities don't necessarily align here. If public safety is our first priority, then one of our first requests should be about public safety. Our second should be about housing, or we can flip them and make housing our first priority and keep a lot of these items in line this way. I think that we might need to step back and look at, now that we've set the priorities and now we've set the list number 1, 2, 3 to 7,800, like revisit that numbering just to make sure it aligns with what we're saying our priorities are, because I'm seeing some.
Paul, were you listening to our meeting the other day?
I was not.
I know. I don't blame
As I said at the outset, I am so glad that you all tackle this and I'm not a part of it.
So that was a very big discussion of the priorities. And in fact, to give you some insight on the capital side, we had, even though public safety was overwhelming the number one concern, we had 0 asks in capital for public safety. So what we did is we wanted to, exactly what you said, we wanted to be consistent, we wanted to be receptive to people, and we included the auxiliary slash satellite, whatever we're going to call it, at the top, one of the top of our lists. Also, if you see homeless outreach, even though they said it was funded, we kept it at the very top of our expense list, just to be consistent with what you said. If you also notice, DSNY has moved up a bunch, and there's a little bit more, there are a few more asks. There's composting asks, there's recycling, there's trash bin pickup there are more asks to be consistent. Hopefully we achieve some of that, to be consistent with the narrative and the priorities.
And I would argue against Marty's applause for shore power coming up above NYCHA capital improvements. And so I would move because housing is a higher priority for us than quality of life. I might shift some of those things around too.
Actually, shore power got dropped from last year. Shore power was 3rd last year. We dropped it.
And it's now 9th.
Yeah.
And I might drop
a couple
farther.
of things.
I wasn't arguing for a change. I was just noting that was there.
Yeah, you were applauding it was there, and I was saying I think it should still be farther down, given public safety and housing are more of the district's needs than quality of life. And I'm not opposed to shore power, don't get me wrong, but I just prioritize differently. Thank you.
Dale?
Okay, I just want to lay this out there first that I'm going to start with the concrete. A satellite NYPD facility in the Hudson Yards area will provide better coordination and service across the entire district. So is that a booth?
No, Christine,
What is
you
that?
had good, I don't mean to call you out, Christine, but you had really good explanation on that when we were in the budget task force that you might be able to.
So Dale, that came out of some conversation with the police, the 10th precinct, where the community affairs guys were saying, we would have come earlier, but we have only 3 cars, and 2 cars are at the other end of the district, and if we have, because we don't have anybody in that location, we can't service it properly. So the idea was to say, look, maybe there should be a spread, because the 10th precinct is on 20th Street, right? Between 7 and 8, or 6 or 7, 7 and 8, right? And then when they have things to do, which are at 11th Avenue, it just doesn't cover. So I don't know what it is.
Right.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
respond
I
to the
mean-
fact that this officer was very honest, and we were telling him, why didn't you come earlier? And he said, well, I just can't. We are all over the place here. And so we don't want to tell them have more cars, right? Not a good idea. We don't want to tell them to have more officers, not a good idea. So the idea was to say, why don't you, and he said himself, if we had a space over there and we take a portion of the officers and put them over there, then it would be much easier to service. So that was, when that came in, I said, well, that sounds like making sense, because as you remember, Dale, for a long time, we have tried to get all the precinct to align, etc. So I think the whole realignment with Hudson Yard and the West Side has not taken place yet. And I think we need to have that.
It's more of a management response, right? It's just like we learned recently, reappropriation of resources in the PD across the board, sort of like the 10th has less and Midtown North and Midtown South have more right now.
Right.
That's a reappropriation of resources. So this is sort of a reappropriation of resources within a precinct, or a reallocation, I think was the thinking.
Right. So
Well,
that's the
I
idea.
mean, yeah, I get it. I get it now. But would it be a booth essentially, or would it be a physical
I don't know. I mean,
space?
I think if you're going to put 100 people there, it's more than a booth, right? It's
100.
It's a space. It's a building. It's a space
Yeah.
where people can, regroup
I mean,
there
I can definitely
and have a
speak
base there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'd be an outpost of some sort, like
Right.
a personed outpost of some
Right.
sort with
I
offices
think
and
outpost
phones.
is a good word. I mean,
Outpost.
sounds-
It's a retail
Yeah.
storefront. It's what I
Right.
feel like it is,
Right.
right? Like it's.
And
Oh,
it
is
could
it?
be a
Okay.
storefront.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeffrey. That helps.
I don't, Dale, I don't know. Frankly, we've never made this ask before, right? Like, I don't think, to Christine's point, like, we're not asking for more of anything. We're asking for
Shifting
smarter
resources.
use.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
geography factor, right?
I
Like,
understand.
and,
I mean,
you know,
I
those were
fully
windswept
understand
rail
because
yards for a long time.
Right.
I fully understand because I live a block from a police precinct, which does not serve me because of the way the district is
Case
cut.
in point.
Right? So like Midtown South is a few hundred feet from my apartment, but I'm technically in Chelsea's district.
That's a
So
good
I
point. We're
get
in the
that
10th.
part. My whole concern is about, I mean, I get that the approach is to shift resources and to, prod the NYPD to use their resources properly. But I just feel over and over again that we're dealing with a police force, which in my opinion, in many ways is rogue. They're heavily politicized. They don't obey the laws of the city themselves, and they don't enforce consistently. So I get that we're prodding them to use their resources properly, but I don't know if this is even a wise approach in the end.
Here you do.
Thank you
Thank you.
for that. Jesse?
I just want to get back to Katie's question. So the response from the agencies for the expansion of the geographic boundaries request, which was item number 2 last year, is further study by the agency is requested at this point. And then the second response for the additional funding for community police relations and more outreach to the community says the agency recommends funding for this expense budget request, but at this time the availability of funds is uncertain.
So it makes sense we kept it. Joe?
And if,
Yeah.
wait, hold on. I want to.
Sorry, hold on,
One
Leslie.
second. I just want to go back to Paul. When you were mentioning, Paul, about moving shore power or other things up and down. When the budget task force looks at the priority list, it's not just what our priorities are. I know that sounds crazy. Well, why is it a priority list? there's also some strategy involved. There's also what have we seen movement on that we want to kind of push up a little bit to get more movement on it? What have we seen that we are constantly getting no, the responses from previous years also play a factor in that. What do we want to comment, more of a commentary on? It's not just, they're all not mutually exclusive. We kind of take it and tease it out that way. I don't know if that helps, but I get what you're saying. Like, this might not be a priority, but if we're getting movement here and here, that's also a factor in our thinking.
Thank you for that explanation. Dolores and I had this argument last year, so
Oh.
I get it.
So now I'm just in place of Dolores?
Yes.
All right. Joe?
Yeah, I remember. The word is substation. We used to have substations in NYCHA. That's the term. And then, Jeffrey, at what point are we going to be able to talk about the order or everything else? Are we getting close to that or not?
Let's talk about it.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, I think let me just pause and ask if folks have more broad, high-level questions on topic and process. And if now we want to, if you'll indulge the expression, put on the gloves and duke it out over an order, if you will, which I would encourage you all to recognize. We spent 3.5 hours on this on Tuesday night. So
Thank you, Jeffrey.
yes, this is the time, Mr. Bastuccia.
Okay, so Leslie, the two items that I want to propose to switch are the 41st Street Station before Harbor
Wait, hold
View.
on. Are you on expense or are you on capital?
I'm on capital, sorry. The switch the 41st Street Station and the Harborview elevators. Harborview elevators are about 6 to 8 million, and the station's 3 billion. So in terms of
I'm good with
achievability,
that. I'm good with that.
Joe, just two factors on that.
Done,
There were
done.
conversations with, all right, it's fine,
No,
but
wait,
also
wait, and
don't
just give me the
forget,
numbers.
That's
Just give me the numbers. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I
sorry,
didn't-
11 and 12 should swap.
that is my proposal, yes.
You got
Just so
it.
you know, there was a conversation with Maria Ortiz about this. And don't forget, when these lists are separated out, DOT doesn't see the NYCHA ask before it, right?
Right.
Like there's a specific, or MTA in this case, right? So they don't know that we put something about housing before a transportation factor.
But it
That's
is
a
the
problem.
public document that goes out with all these
Yes,
rankings
yes.
in the end.
Yes,
The other question I
But
have for
we-
Leslie, sorry.
go ahead.
The other question I have for Leslie is, what happened to the HCC organizing attorney ask? Where did that go?
It's in there.
That's an expense.
That's an
I couldn't
expense.
find it.
Yeah.
Do I have an old version?
No.
Are you in the Dropbox?
Nope,
Joe?
it's in there. It's in there.
I'm in the Dropbox.
Go to expense, because that's an
Yep.
expense one.
That's where I was. Tell me where to go.
All right, where is it? Is it Jesse? Is it in there? Is it?
Yeah, it's in there. Give me a moment. Give me a
Yeah, I'm
moment.
looking too.
Because our housing committee was very hot on
Number
that.
23.
23.
Yep, 23. Provide
Okay.
additional funding for housing attorney and tenant organizer, that one?
Got it. See it now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Dale, that's from before, right? Or,
Yeah, I think Dale's hand's just hanging out.
Oh, my hand's not up, sorry.
oh, okay, okay.
Any other questions on order?
Motion to stop.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Actually,
Madam
can I-
Second Vice Chair.
Sorry, can I just mention,
Christine, and-
Wait, Katie
Christine
has
and
a
then
second
Katie.
thought.
Katie, go ahead. Katie, go
no,
ahead.
no, this isn't a second thought. I just happened to be scrolling through and I saw a typo. I'm just gonna flag it for you.
Yeah.
That's all.
You
But I
can
can, I'll
Send it to
email you.
Jesse.
Yes, email it
Yes.
to me.
Send it to Jesse.
Motion to approve.
There we go, Christine. Is there a second? Carrie has the second.
Thank you, Carrie.
Any objections? Abstention? Present not eligible?
Present not
I-
eligible on
You're-
items 1 and 2 on capital.
Two things, if folks could call them out now on the meeting, and then also send a note to Jesse. So Joe, you are P&E on which numbers?
Capital 1 and 2.
Thank you. I am a P&E on expense 23. Is anybody else a P&E?
Jeffrey, this is Maria. I'm a P&E.
Yep.
I don't know what number it is right now, but the letter that
It's the right-
has, yes,
Ryan Center, right? So,
Yes,
okay,
correct.
so that means Maria, Joe, and I have to send a note to Jesse to let him know which numbers we're P&E on.
Thank you,
After
Jeffrey.
that, we have, everybody's in favor, right? Great. Congratulations, Leslie, on your
And bravo
first.
bravo to Leslie. She did a great job.
Thank
Really.
you.
Yep,
Very
you.
intense.
Thank you.
sure is. So with that, as I mentioned, now on to item 3, we're tabling the state sites discussion on the affordable housing plan because we are taking the affordable housing plan on a roadshow. And we have a lot of really exciting meetings set up in the coming week or two. And we want to have discussions with folks that we can then report back on accordingly. So stay tuned for more on that. And that segues into my chair's report on some small meeting stuff. We had a really excellent meeting with the council member on the affordable housing plan earlier this week. We have other meetings scheduled with our representatives in state elected office, with the city planning chair, as well as the city housing czar. And she's not a czar, there's a specific title that Jessica Katz has on the affordable housing plan. But, you know, if folks haven't taken a look at it, you know, we voted on it back in July, but really it's worth even just 10 minutes of your time to scroll through there. And, you know, we're taking on a roadshow for a reason, because it should be seen as a gift to the city. And so hopefully that's the case. The Port Authority stuff, Mr. Lazarin, that is kicked back off. Do you want to share anything about that with the exec?
With exec, those of you who are paying attention, we had a meeting with the Port Authority for the first time in a couple of months, last Wednesday, the 19th. We have a commitment. It hasn't been implemented yet, but we have a commitment to go back to a regular schedule. This meeting with the Port Authority was a little different than what we usually do, because we had some participants, the architects, newly hired by the Port Authority for the redevelopment and the rebuilding. Eventually, we'd like to have a walk around on the site, on the sites, because remember, we're not just talking about the Port Authority building on 8th Avenue now. We're talking about 2 bus terminals, one on 10th, one on 8th. We're talking about perhaps some commercial high rises, some residential high rises. We emphasize that we want to make sure, we want to know the perception that let's put it this way, we want to make sure that the perception of the pedestrian, the people walking through, people of the neighborhood, people going to work one way or another, their relationship to the buildings is not overwhelmed by the building. That there's a direct connection between the people on the street and the buildings they're passing by. We're also very concerned about, and we expressed this to the architects, and we've expressed this to the Port Authority people for months and years now, actually, that this is in the middle of Hell's Kitchen, and we don't want it to be divisive. We don't want it to, let's not call it, you know, to the area to the north and the area to the south. We don't want it to be any more divided than it is. In fact, they can make it less divided. That would be even the better. But we want to get back to regular scheduled meetings. We still have outstanding items. We express those items, the transportation items, the mitigation items during construction. We don't have answers, because probably they don't have answers completely yet. And again, we want to get back to a schedule. I'll say, sure, but we haven't. Just this last meeting, I know Jesse was back and forth with them. I don't know how many times. Is this date good? Well, it's good for these people. It's not, you know, we're dealing with a dozen people right now. to coordinate. But we want to get it back to a regular schedule so everybody will know as they plan ahead, every other Thursday we'll be meeting or whatever day of the week we decide. Any questions?
Thanks, Bert.
Okay.
On Penn Station, that it was 2 weeks ago, Christine and I attended the first public realm task force, if you will, for the Penn Station area specifically. That is being managed and sort of overseen by Claire Weiss of WXY Architecture, sort of separate and apart from the architects that have been hired to redesign the station. This specifically is step one to come up with a public realm plan for the streetscape and area around the station. I think our next meeting is in November. And we will sort of keep you appraised on that. And I see a slew. Christine, do you want to add to what I sort of just said there? Paul, if you
No,
will
that was
indulge me,
additional
she's on the
to
committee.
everybody. So Paul, go first.
Okay, Paul?
No, I just wanted to ask, I thought this public realm task force, we were going to try to get more seats. Was there any success in accomplishing that?
Unsuccessful, Miss. You would have been the first to know, Paul. So far, because I would have been saying it's you and also, you know, my sympathies.
Yeah, right.
But no, so far, no. Frankly, I think there's a couple of things politically that I had made the ask before the first meeting. The meeting has now happened. I think there's some settling to happen. For example, MSG is a part of the group for the first time ever. They're at the table. So, you know, I'm not giving up on that ask, and obviously we'll let you know there.
Yeah, I was more interested about what CB5 has for seats there, because mostly they are turf.
No, if CB5 gets 3 seats, we're getting 3 seats, Paul.
I just didn't know what they had. Okay, thank you.
No, sorry, the community boards are equal. So 2 and 2.
All right, thanks.
Christine?
So I think yesterday there was a lawsuit filed against ESD by the group of people which have been, opposed to the project and challenging the use of the GPP and a number of things. So I just want to give you that information.
Many of us assumed there would be lawsuits, so they now begin. Thanks, Christine. Bert?
I have a question. I got emails about an alternate plan, community driven.
Sure.
And I don't know if that was under the auspices of 5, or I just want to know, are we involved in any way?
No, we are
this?
not.
What's going on?
We are not. We were not approached about it. We were not involved, and
Fine.
I'll leave it at that.
Is that
It's
covering?
essentially driven by
Jeffrey,
5.
excuse me.
It's
You said
it's
you're going to
driven by
leave it.
5 right now. Basically, it seems to be the desire for what should have been a 197A plan a decade ago.
Right.
And if they had done that a decade ago, it would have informed the GPP that we now have to deal with. And so this is a reaction to a process. And so there's nothing in the GPP. The GPP is flexible to an extent, and maybe some good things will come out of this community planning process for the area. But the GPP has been voted on and has been codified by the Empire State Development Corporation. And so that's what we are governing. CB4 is sort of governing by right now. And that's where that stands. Any other questions on Penn? I'm going to pass it over to Jesse for Cannabis Working Group.
Hi. So very quickly, we're actually had a really great meeting today with Jesse Greenwald and I helped put this together, meeting with 2 other community boards who have similar groups, working groups. Community Board 9 has had a group and had folks looking at this for much longer than we have. And it was actually really, really helpful to understand their perspective. They actually have somebody on the board who's got their own CBD brand for many years and is involved, and so has a really great perspective. And because of that, they are much more involved actually in being communicated to by the Office of Cannabis Management. So that's also really helpful because we basically have had nothing really in response to anything we've done. So we're going to be working with them, which I think is going to be a huge help to everybody. In addition, we reached out to Department of Worker and Consumer Protection, formerly Department of Consumer Affairs, and we're going to sit down with them because they do play a role on some level, and we want to understand their role, and that'll happen next week. And then finally, we've been in touch with. So we've been asking to meet with OCM. So is a lot of the boards, task forces have been looking to meet with OCM. OCM is literally, I think, made up of 2.5 people still. They're way behind, they're way below, underwater. There's no way. They're basically very honest and saying, we cannot meet with you all. So what I thought what to do was again, use the office of the borough president. This is where the borough president does such a great job of kind of saying, okay, fine, we understand you're not going to be able to meet with 59 community boards or even 12 community boards, but you can meet with us and we can organize a meeting. So that's what they are working on. And I think they are also working on, I don't want to, let the cat out of the bag, but I think they're also working on a OCM having a component in their board leadership training season that's coming up very shortly. So I think that'll be for more of the general board public than our task forces. But we are moving ahead with some good meetings and getting some great connections and information.
Thanks, Jesse. Joe?
Jesse, is the task force going to consider specific issues or items about the cannabis locations, like concentration? In other words, the same way we do with liquor licenses, how these things work. Is that part of the task force's thoughts so far?
Yeah, I don't want to say that they've decided they have they don't have an equation or a policy yet. I think they want to understand. I think that's part of the task force's role to see how they're going to make what they're really going to do is make a set of recommendations back to us as to how best they think we can manage this, whether that's through a committee similar to how BLP handles liquor licenses, if it's something where it's more of a policy, where we kind of come up with a set of policies so it's either like if you're either meeting this policy or not, and we're going to approve, we're going to recommend approval or disapproval. It's still a lot of this is to be figured out still on the city side, on the state side, as well as what are we actually seeing? What do we get? They're going to be so busy just trying to basically go around and communicate to all of these, completely illegal setups first. I don't know, but yeah, that's the short answer is yes.
So when it comes
Leslie, sorry, Joe.
No, yes. So when it comes to actually happening, do we have any understanding that I'm assuming a cannabis license is just another version of a liquor license. It's got to be some public process or something. Am I wrong, or is that not how it's thought to be going to work? Or we just don't know?
I honestly don't know. I don't know if I have I don't have the right information to give you. We have a bunch of questions that we've been basically pushing towards OCM on this for quite a while on this, and so we don't have a complete understanding of what length of involvement we will have, and or I don't know. Let's say that. I don't want to say Jesse doesn't know, or maybe someone else on this committee knows better than I.
But Joe, this was the whole thrust of why we wanted to start the working group.
Right.
So that way, as the state figures itself out, we get to figure ourselves out as well.
And we get ahead of the curve to make recommendations too, right?
Correct. Leslie and then Dale, please. Leslie?
Thanks, Jeffrey. I think this question's either to Jeffrey or Jesse. Is the cannabis working group, our cannabis working group, limited just to about the locations, or is it just pot related in issues in the neighborhood?
No,
or is it just
to
specific to locations and how they're going to
related? It's related to the legalization of adult use, and the sale of, right. So the sort of the technical licensing factor. I don't think it's
so it's not like
is that
Yeah, I mean, so if, I don't know where would we bring it up if like now that it's legal and people are smoking outside and they're near, you know what I mean? Like where, if there are complaints or like where they smoke, stuff like that. Does that, the cannabis working group deal with that or no?
No.
No, it
No,
doesn't.
it's very much set up as a license, as a license
Licensing?
consideration, mostly so that way we can be ready for, figuring out if we're gonna end up with X number of licenses that we get a chance to opine on, how are we gonna end up managing
Or like a
that on our-
BLP, right? Yeah. So if we do
But
have,
imagine, imagine if I told Frank and Bert we're gonna add 30 new licenses to their agenda every week for the next 2 years, that they're all gonna retire.
It's the BCLP committee.
Correct. We're gonna have to have an A and a W.
so regular
sorry, Leslie,
issues
is
in the
that-
community would be, in the community would be then to ACEs, I'm guessing, right? Like street life?
I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Dale?
No, Jesse, not street life?
Yeah, we can talk about it offline. Let's find
Okay.
a home for it.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Dale.
You.
Sorry. Okay, Jesse, I totally get that the cannabis office is brand new and they're behind capacity. But did they, in your meeting, did they give you any concept of like, and based on the criteria that it's required to become a licensed cannabis distributor merchant, did they give you a concept of like numbers? Like we're looking at, licensing X number of individuals or businesses within a year, or did any kind of quantification?
No, in the fact that we have not met with them. That's like, we're not even, it's not like we're meeting with them and they're not giving us information. We're requesting to meet with them.
Right.
And they literally cannot meet with us. And so that's why we took the route of, I shifted our route to go to the, they're basically throwing it upon the borough president. They did come to a borough board, I believe, right, Jeffrey? Or maybe it was a separate meeting. I can't remember. I think it was over the summer in July or something. It was, not when, let's say, the bulk of board members are, there and ready to go. And so we're kind of calling a little bit of their bluff and going back to the borough president and saying, okay, fine, you want to work through the borough president's office, then let's work through the borough president's office.
Right.
What ended up happening was all of these community boards started their own groups, and then they started going after the OCM. So no, we haven't even had that meeting yet to ask that.
Yeah, I suspect based on the qualifications and the way the state has been operating, that it's going to be a relatively small number of licenses granted over a rollout period. And that in a way could even exacerbate the fact that these non-sanctioned distributors have jumped into the fray.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that today, which was sort of the unfortunate end. The unfortunate where they spent their money was advertising that this is happening and that it's legal. And that's it. And so what ended up happening was everybody
basically
started a business. And
they
so
basically
now,
sounded the trumpets and everybody heard the trumpets.
right. So now it's one of Jesse's ideas that he was working with these other boards today about, which I got to say was smart, is like, it's not going to silver bullet. It's not going to clear up everything, but there needs to be a course change. There needs to be a follow-up ad campaign explaining that people who are, completely, unlicensed and not following the rules or whatever, and just because you sent some document in to some organization does not mean you're going to be you're line jumping basically, but you're also putting yourself at a huge risk for not ever getting a license again. So
and I was under the assumption that it wouldn't be necessarily the cannabis office that would be doing enforcement of
that's why we have
licensed
Department of-
distributor.
that's why we're meeting.
I thought it was consumer affairs.
Exactly. So we're
Yeah.
multitasking, and and I hope that but we've we're stuck in the mud for a little bit now. I think we're kind of moving forward generally in a good way, and sort of building a coalition at least from Manhattan side of things.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay, well,
Bert?
thanks for the update.
Yeah, just a point of information. Everybody's saying licenses. The community board doesn't do all the liquor licenses.
You
All
are
we do are the retail restaurants and bar liquor licenses. We don't, liquor stores do not come to us for a liquor license. A bodega
Right.
doesn't come to us for a liquor license, okay? That has nothing to do with the community board. And so also remember that we're talking about cannabis licenses. There's going to be different kinds of licenses. There's going to be at least a distribution license, which would be the equivalent of a liquor store. And I think the phrase, and I don't know if there's anything more recent,
Consumption.
is cannabis lounge,
Yeah, that's right.
i.e. a bar, a restaurant. A cannabis lounge, which is the equivalent of the restaurant, that in terms of the community board has more confluence with what we do now than people who are just, selling the cannabis. Here's the, the high quality, the middle quality, the shit quality,
It's a new law. We can ask for whatever we want.
Say what?
Yeah,
It's
so-
a new law.
Yeah, I'm just saying, Joe, that don't take it for granted that we're going to be like, all the licenses are going to come through the community board.
Thank you, Bert. So to be continued on this, and also to Jesse, like Jesse said, almost every Manhattan board almost has something going on this, and it's certainly been scaling up at the borough president's office as well. A while ago, well, not a while ago, but feels like a while ago, I announced that we are a recipient of the NYU Capstone program. That has kicked off. Our esteemed first vice chair is the chair of that working group. She's at the theater this evening and not here with us tonight. But that work is ongoing. Stay tuned for updates. All of that is just sort of literally starting. So not much to share on that front. Other small meetings. I mentioned the meeting with the council member earlier this week regarding the affordable housing plan. Today, we had a small meeting with EDC. I had to get my state and my city agency correct there regarding Piers 92 and 94. You'll recall this summer we sent a really excellent letter that I thoroughly enjoyed reading today to Vornado, who is the current permit holder at those piers, and EDC regarding what EDC should be getting on the lease with Vornado. For a decade plus, Vornado has not followed through on its commitments with the city, and we wanted to give the city some ammunition and to light a fire based on sort of what we've been asking for. They were very tight-lipped. They're in the midst of negotiations that need to be wrapped up by January. And we were not shy in our commentary regarding what we do and don't want to be happening. And I really think, in short, we gave some direction that the city was curious to be hearing.
We brought the fire.
We lit the fire, and we would not necessarily be angry if Vornado didn't end up with a lease on this facility. So I've also since notified the borough president and the council member about our meeting there to really continue, pushing on this. We don't have a lot of time, but want to make sure we're doing all we can there. This is a hot issue and has been for a decade plus. The transportation and WPE committees met with the public bathroom task force. This is a task force that's sort of been organized by various community boards, of which we are now a member, to figure out how we can bring more public bathrooms to the city of New York, of which we basically have none. There's some great TikTok accounts that will tell you where the best bathrooms are around the city, but they're not technically public. Jessica gave, as co-chair of CLU, gave testimony regarding the EMS sighting station to the City Planning Commission yesterday. And I think that was it for the small meetings from a sort of high level this month. I have to say, sort of stay tuned. I am eager and excited to be taking the affordable housing plan on a roadshow along with Joe and Jessica, and really just sort of people, when you send people a 160-page document, they don't willingly read it. But when you take them through it and show them the grit and the caliber and the detail, you get somewhere. So we're trying that, and hopefully we have much more to report on, a good way on that. That's it for me on the chair's report. I'm going to pass it over to Jesse for district manager.
All righty. Just wanted, as you might know, like we just voted on earlier, the mayor extended the EO for another 30 days. So we're able to meet 100% virtually until the end of November. That's on our website if anybody has a question. And just for everybody here as co-chairs of committees, right, you guys have gotten into a very good rhythm of explaining that at the beginning of each of your committees. I just say I've noticed a lot of it says under the guidance, under the executive order of the governor, it's now under the executive order of the city. That's the only change. That might change as well if the governor ends up another executive order, but just right now it's for the city. Full board agenda is in your in the Dropbox. Please take a look at it. Make sure that we have everything correct. I believe we do. We actually, because of all the hard work you guys all did for the budget, you really don't, there's not that many letters that will be going through, but please take a look at that. The committee schedule is in the agenda, as in the Dropbox as well for November. Everybody, please take a look at that. There's a lot of blank spaces there still, but for for the committees that do have stuff, please take a look at it so you guys are aware of what the other committees are working on, and if there needs to be some coordination around that, we can do so beforehand. That is the goal. In terms of schedule-wise, I believe the only committee that is moved is BLP due to election day. ACE is in a slightly different look, not a different time. It just looks a little bit different because it's the second Monday. So that's why it looks a little bit different. But that's where it normally would be anyway. But BLP is the only committee to my knowledge that I think that is changed. Everything else is as is, which is nice, going back to a nice normal month out of the month of October. And then office space, we are in a much better place about office space than we were for the last 3 months, which we were going around and around and about this HVAC issue. And it looks like we have that solved, and we're going to have an office that will be both cool and that we can hear each other speak and not have a industrial size air conditioner blowing in our ears. And so I'm excited about that. And that's all I have to say.
The new office space would be fantastic. Not only is it at a great location on 9th Avenue, the lobby is a historic Art Deco lobby of which our board has great familiarity with. And huge props to Jesse here on his diligence in getting the city to make things happen in the negotiation. Any questions for Jesse? Okay, 3 items of new business. The first one is a transportation letter, which broadly, Christine, sorry, I'll pass it over to you.
I can do that, yeah. Thank you, Jesse, Jeffrey. We have, even though DOT is doing a lot of work in our neighborhood, and unfortunately, they are doing it halfway and unfinished. Some of the things have not been finished for 18 months. And it has become a real issue because, a pedestrian refuge or a bike lane painted, once the paint goes away, well, the facility is gone, right? It's not like it's not pretty, it's just like it's gone. So I have been doing about 3 or 4 walkthrough with DOT during the summer, saying all the things which are wrong. And then eventually, Eric Butcher has asked, I have asked Eric Butcher to help us. He has asked a list of the issues. And this letter that you see has a list of the issue. If you click on the link, you will see a PowerPoint which has all the details. And essentially, I've regrouped that into 3 or 4 major items. One is the timing of resurfacing. Every time there is a resurfacing, it seems that there is no follow-up to repaint behind it. And that has happened. We have been waiting 18 months on 9th Avenue, 11th Avenue. We have been waiting since June, and it's really not acceptable because resurfacing is a business as usual. So there should be a process for that. The quality is that it's all over the place. It's very difficult. My guess is that they have taken the crews which were working on 9th Avenue and put them to work on 34th Avenue in Queens to do a big announcement. And we have lost all the teams which were supposed to work on us. And the better design, they are still not doing a very good job as far as protecting vertical protection. We have to ask again, 11th Avenue is being used as, the bike lane is used as a highway by the people on the weekend. It's really not good. And then finally, the enforcement of open restaurant rules. When DDC wanted to redo the upper side of, upper part of 9th Avenue between 58th and 51st, they removed 35 dining sheds in about 2 minutes. By contrast, DOT has not been able to remove 10 sheds in 6 months in order to properly resurface 8th and 9th Avenue. So there is clearly a problem with DOT and their understanding or their ability to remove those sheds. And as a result, they are redoing the lanes or the street in an incomplete fashion, means they are going to have to come back. So this is the letter we want to send it today. The reason we want to send it today is because first, Eric Butcher has asked for the letter to talk to DOT, and second, construction of the streets stops by Thanksgiving. So 3 weeks from now. And if we don't move now and they don't bring the team right now, we're going to be living like that the whole winter again. This is the second year. And so this is the reason we are asking to approve it tonight so that it can go out.
Thanks, Christine. Jesse? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I meant to mention this to you just in a slight language about the argument about how DOT got the restaurants on 9th Avenue to move so quickly when they needed to resurface. I'm a little weary of just making that such a big point because we did ask them to delay an entire season. They delayed because of us.
That was DDC.
Yeah, well, yes, but we
never asked DOT to delay anything.
No, we didn't ask the DOT to delay, but the reason why DOT was doing that was because of the DDC project, which we had asked them to delay. We, the board, and the council member's office had asked them to delay. So I understand the argument. I guess maybe my ask would be just to, in terms of the sentence about how quickly DOT did the resurfacing, maybe just remove
but Jesse, these are 2 separate sections of 9th Avenue. One doesn't have anything to do with the other.
So you're saying the argument about DOT moving so many had nothing to do with
I'm saying DDC has moved 35 restaurants in 2 weeks.
Right.
That's in the section of 9th Avenue. Then there is another section of 9th Avenue, which was the resurfacing. And on that section, DOT has not removed 10, and on 8th Avenue, DOT has not removed the restaurants there. even though they have given them tickets and given them summons saying you need to cease and desist. So these are two separate area completely.
No, I understand that. I guess my point being, my point being is just about the 35 that they removed, that's due to the DDC project. Are we not saying that?
Yes.
Right, but I just don't want us to look like we're saying we asked them to delay that with that whole thing because of the restaurants, and now we're using it as a way of saying, you know.
No, but this is still two separate things. We asked them to delay 1 year ago because the restaurants didn't want. We needed the restaurant to recover, right?
Right.
So as a policy, we said let's not touch it. But once we say touch it and remove it, then DDC went on and removed 35 and DOT removed none.
I think it's more a matter of current
Yeah.
capacity at DOT than it is like us being inconsistent with our thinking.
Right.
All right.
Well, and I think it's also a DOT legal reading maybe, which says we don't want to remove them.
No, I get I agree with you that they should remove them just as quickly as they did the other ones. I don't disagree with that. I'm a little weary about just talking about the 35, the sheds that in 2 weeks thing. But if you guys feel that's accurate and strong, then
I think it is accurate. I think it is.
No, I defer to you.
Right.
Okay, so first, JD, does your cat
Okay.
have a question? I wondered. There was a very curious tale that I didn't know if they had a question, but sorry, Paul.
Just to address Jesse's discussion with Christine just now, Christine, maybe we insert a phrase like, once an agreement was reached for the removal of the streetscape, then it took 2 weeks for DDC.
We can do that. We can do
Just to
that.
point out that because I agree with Jesse, we did ask them to delay, and now we're pointing to a lengthy delay, sudden movement, and now there's a lengthy, so I just think maybe just add in a clause like that might be helpful.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul. Sounds like a friendly amendment. Any other questions on this transportation letter? Okay. Can I get a motion on this letter, please?
Motion
Thanks,
to adopt.
Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Leslie with a second. Any objections? Present, not eligible. Abstentions? The letter passes unanimously. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, everybody. Up next, I'm going to pass it over to Joe for a new business item regarding a recently meaning yesterday, illegal demo on 35th Street. Joe?
Yeah, we have two items. One's illegal demo. The other one is DHS and the new hotel. The first one is 317, 319 West 35th Street. The board has written 4 letters between 2016 and 2019. And actually, it's a legal demo of 2 tenements that displaced 28 apartments. And we worked with this developer very closely through the land use committee and the housing committee to come up with a solution. The developer agreed you cannot do demolition of residential buildings in an area of the garment center between 35th and 40th Streets. The DOB illegally gave him a permit, stop work order in place. So we figured out, how can we make this work? The actual arrangement was that the developer would build 14 units permanently affordable and have a regulatory agreement with HPD governing that permanent affordability that will enable them to build a hotel above those units. We worked in a garment center rezoning to have a specific carve out called an ATEX that was certified after the garment center revisions were certified to have that happen, because there was a concern that the hotel would be subject to special permit. And we got them relief from that. And the board and the council member had several meetings with the Department of Buildings and the Borough Commissioner at DOB in order to codify everything and have a predetermination to have this happen. They were 2 locations, 2 different developers, 319, 321 West 38th, the other one 317, 319 West 35th. The 38th Street group followed through. And in fact, there is an agreement to build 18 units of permanently affordable housing at that site. In this case, this developer did not follow through. And then DOB, unbelievably, because this developer, I did some research today, Jeffrey, submitted a zoning request determination, just talking about the special permit, nothing about the demolition. DOB approved a zoning request determination saying they can now build a fully commercial building at this site, irrespective of illegal demolition of residential housing. I found out this yesterday as I passed in a cab, I'm not kidding. Jeffrey became aware of it, the borough president's aware of it, and the council members aware of it, all of whom have reached out to the DOB commissioner, who unfortunately, the intergovernmental folks wrote back to us today stating, oh, here's the zoning determination, they can build a commercial building. So it has nothing to do with commercial buildings, this has everything to do with legal demolition. So we need to write a letter that just chronicles and attaches all of our prior letters. And I'm very happy to note, Jesse, I found emails from the owner's representative to me stating that the board has reached agreement with that the owner has reached agreement with the board to do the permanently affordable housing. So we have a whole list of everything that's happened here. And this just happened yesterday. Questions?
Thanks, Joe. Bert, did you have a question?
Yeah, has the demolition begun?
The demolition started in 2016 and has been stopped since.
It was stopped. Right.
Stopped.
So
And
when you went by in the cab yesterday, what did you see?
there is a full construction crew working, because after it stopped and the owner agreed to do the permanent housing,
Okay,
sometime in 2021, they removed all the facades from the building. And the claim today, and Jesse, you have to hear this, they're saying that they did not remove more than 20% of the buildings. They have been entirely demolished. They say they only moved 16.67%. And if we stopped those people on 47th Street, because they were like 2% off on 20%.
19.5%.
Right.
21.5% or something.
Yeah, 21.5, and these people, when they demolish an entire building, is 16.67. It's a incredible problem of a lack of continuity. We have approvals from the buildings Manhattan Borough Commissioner on this, so someone has not looked it up. So we need to notify everybody, stop, and just get back to the table.
Any other questions on this illegal demo with a long history? Paul?
So is this going as an administrative letter, just reinforcing our?
No, it's
previous
a letter from the
positions?
board that'll be ratified, because we need to take a clear position.
All right, so we don't have the letter right now, so none of us know what's in the letter specifically, correct?
This happened yesterday, so we're here today.
Right.
I think, no, Paul, listen, Jesse, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I did add into your Dropbox all of the previous letters. So I mean, in all honesty, all we would be doing is like 95% cutting and pasting from all of that material, and then putting maybe what we are doing right now. So
Right.
Yeah, I think the thinking that I had, knowing there was not going to be a letter before you all tonight, was that it would literally, we discovered this. It is not like listing the reasons of wrong, attaching previous correspondence. You know, we expect X.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking it could be an administrative letter, that rather than having a formal vote of this committee, because we don't have a letter we're reviewing.
This
that
is an emergency,
administrative
it happens
letter
all the
could
time.
come from. No, we do administrative letters in this situation.
Paul, I, you know, sometimes admin letters don't get the light of day that the topic is worthy, and given what seems to be an uptick in this activity, if the committee would be willing, I would appreciate a vote on this evening. Dale?
I moved that.
Yeah,
we write the letter. Sorry, Dale.
Yeah,
I was making a motion that we write the letter.
just one quick thing before you do that, JD. At one point, with this topic of illegal demolitions and the building department's apparent complicity in these processes, I suggested that the letters get a letter of similar urgency get CC'd to the state's attorney general, just so there's like a record, like, I just want to make sure this one does as well.
yeah, let's do that for sure. We haven't had one of these in so long, but let's do that.
JD, I'll take your motion. Is there a second to JD's motion on the letter?
second,
Thank you, Bert. Any objections? Abstention? Present, not eligible. The letter passes. Thank you, everybody. This will be going out as soon as possible, and ideally, the full board would ratify. Bert, is this a question?
No, I would like to make.
I have one more item.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Joe.
Yep,
After
Joe has
Joe,
one
I
more
wanna
item,
make-
and then I have Leslie, and then to you. Joe?
Okay.
So the next one is a letter to DHS. We had a very good meeting, the Housing Health and Human Services Committee with DHS and the provider for the Travel Inn and Skyline last Thursday. A few items came out of it, and then an action totally contradicting everything that we learned. First, we learned that Assemblymember Rosenthal has twice been to the Skyline, once to bring Ryan Center to connect them with the provider, and was not allowed access to the building until she called up the commissioner of HRA, Jenkins, to get her in, who was put on a speakerphone, and the person there said, well, who are you? An elected official could not get into a publicly funded facility. They went back with 3 carloads of donations last week, and again, were told they could not get into the building. And again, the same sort of process happened, which is a very odd thing. We've never seen this before. The second thing is, we talked about certain locations that were not in our board and board 5. DHS cited that because of privacy, they could not disclose addresses. Yet those very addresses were sent to either board 4 or board 5 in official letters, and the same day had been sent to the Midtown South precinct with the addresses. So that was a complete lack of transparency on DHS. The other thing that came out, which is very odd, we brought up something specifically about an asylum seeker shelter. And the answer was, that's not us, that's somebody else. And I made a point that it doesn't matter who's administering it for the city of New York. We as a neighborhood need to know everything. And you cannot say it's not my job. And on the heels of it, the last question we said, are you planning any more shelters in our district? And the answer was, we can't say this, but we've heard you loud and clear. We understand, we understand. And on Monday, the board received a letter to reopen the Washington Jefferson on West 51st Street between 8th and 9th with 130 rooms for asylum seekers and homeless families. So the whole sort of discussion, which I think we moved ahead a little bit to regain some trust with DHS, although there are these couple of flaws, they immediately acted and did not notify the board. And the answer will be, that's not our jurisdiction. So we just want to do a quick chronicle letter that notes these items that were very odd, and that, again, without any notice, we received location of another shelter. Simple as that. It's more like just creating a record as opposed to taking a position.
Thanks, Joe. Paul, and then Katie.
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat. I don't see a letter to vote on. I don't know how this is working with a letter for us to vote and approve. Can this wait until full board or something? I don't.
It's going to be, again, it'll go to full board. I'm bringing it because it came after committee.
But I don't see a letter for today for us to vote on. We don't have an actual, we don't know what we're voting on.
There would be
right now.
I'm sorry, Paul, to clarify, there would be a letter in the Dropbox for the full board, but I'm bringing it because it has to come out of executive, not out of Housing and Human Services, because this new shelter didn't happen until Monday.
So we're acting as a committee here.
Right, right.
Correct, on this topic.
On
On
this
this topic. Okay, all right, thanks for the clarification.
There will be definite letter, certainly.
Good point, Paul. Katie.
I have to say, I'm very uncomfortable with exec voting on a letter that isn't drafted yet. I understand that it feels pressing, but I really feel like it's good to raise the issues here. But I think a lot about this letter is going to be about tone and words. And I will say, Joe, even just some of what you just described as what came up during the meeting on Thursday, I have a slightly different recollection. So I would be much more comfortable not having a vote on a letter that isn't written yet.
Would you like to eliminate everything about this except for the Washington Jefferson, because they did say to us, they heard us loud and clear, and yet they sent us another shelter on Monday. How about we go with that, Katie?
So I guess I would be really comfortable saying, hey, we're really surprised to hear about this. But what I heard on Thursday was that, or whenever we had the meeting, was that they said, we don't know of any right now in your district that are coming. That's what we can say, but we hear you loud and clear that there's oversaturation. So,
what is that? Okay, I'm going to really be direct.
Yep.
What does that mean that a deputy commissioner came to us and said, we don't know anything, And then 2 days later, 3 days later, there's another shelter announced with no notice. Now, come on. I think we
Well,
have to,
so
we have to
I
respond to
think-
that.
Right, but I think what they gave us on Monday was notice, right?
That it was opening on Monday.
Right. I mean, look, Joe, I agree this is all a lot going on, but what I've heard, and I think what we've all heard, is that that things are literally happening like, and in fact, I think this is the very point she was making on Thursday. Like she said, I don't know of any, but she said, I can't tell you that there isn't something coming down the pike. And we kept pressing, well, there are any coming down the pike. And she's like, I don't know of any, but there may be.
And how
so-
reasonable a position is that?
So
To be
a couple
honest-
of factors here. I want to just, for context, remind everybody there's up to 9 buses a day arriving in the
Yes,
city still at Port Authority. I am hearing this and I am more inclined to take this item up as new business with a drafted letter at the full board meeting and not take a vote this evening. So that way there's language to discuss and reflect on. And
that sounds perfect, Jeffrey.
it comes out of it that way. I think it's just a little easier given this is obviously heightened and extremely important, but also I think appropriate given the topic that we are responding to words on a page, not just sort of the summary. So Maria, do you still want to?
I think, I could stay quiet right now. I'm choosing not to. I hear what Joe is saying and I hear what you're saying, Jeffrey. And what I would like to do is give a little bit of pushback because I want to bring a little bit of perspective here. Okay. And I am very passionate about this topic. Why? Because I sit as co-chair on Housing, Health, and Human Services. Okay. Since before COVID and have had to deal with this issue many times, many emails, hearing from many people. Also because I was born and raised in this community. I am Latina. I have lived in a shelter in this community. I care about families that live in shelter in this community. I think that it is unacceptable when we hear from somebody such in a high position at DHS that they don't know if another shelter is coming here. That's not acceptable anymore. Enough, right? And it's not to say that we don't want a shelter in this community. That's not how I feel about it. I don't think that's how everybody on the committee feels about it. Also, Sabrina has said this on public meetings that have been recorded, that at this point, there are not 9 buses coming anymore into the Port Authority. It has decreased. And in fact, she was one of the volunteers with the families that are coming in and the asylum seekers, and she is not needed anymore. I want to put things in perspective and let's be real about the situation. I hear you, Katie, I hear you, and I know you come from a good place. However, it is not okay to say what DHS is doing is okay. It's enough. And it's not okay how the families are being treated. It is not okay. And I think we need to do more. And I think we need a strong letter. Enough.
I agree, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Bert?
Yeah, it's hard to follow you, Maria. I still haven't caught my breath yet. We can't wait another month until the committee meets to go through that process, have the committee do it. Something has to come out of here. I don't care if we vote on it tonight, don't vote on it, but it has to go to, something has to be in the full board with a letter that the full board can vote on because time.
I want to be very clear in that regard. The reason I'm not going to seek a vote this evening is because I want us to be voting on a letter before us, which we will have as a new business item at full board next Wednesday. So we'll all have the ability to review that letter. It will be taken up as any new business item is allowed to at our full board meeting without, committee approval to begin with. And so we'll debate that letter as we would a committee as the full board next week. Christine?
Yeah, it's really upsetting. you know, and we've been saying that over and over again, but it seems that we are getting much more than our fair share of, you know, of services, of support, of everything. And didn't we have in the charter a fair share requirement? And who is putting together a fair share analysis of showing where people should be spread over everyone? You know, everyone should be helping them. And so what are we doing about that? Because having, and I understand this is infuriating, having DHS just drop everything on us is like we are completely in reactive mode. And where is the plan, and where are the plan for putting people in different places, right? Where is that plan? Do we have something? I mean, you know, they have been working on those things for the last 3 months. And why, I mean, I don't know whether it is all coming in our neighborhood, but I'd like to know whether it's all coming in our neighborhood and whether it's spread around so that our services are not exhausted or the school, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you know, is there any people going to the Upper East Side schools?
Yeah, I think that I'm concerned that if we add a fair share consideration to this letter, there's almost two topics, I think.
Right.
The one that Joe has raised this evening, based on their committee meeting last Thursday and the news we learned on Monday. And then the fact that the saturation is unyielding and only getting richer, and that is fundamentally a problem.
I would suggest that we need 2 letters, really. We need to talk about the saturation. We need to talk about the fact that it feels like, and we don't have the numbers, but it feels like we are completely overwhelmed and it's all coming in our neighborhood. And we need to know what you know, how is the rest of the city supporting the effort, which should be done.
We asked for those numbers, Christina, at the committee to tell us where, for the humanitarian side, have other hotels been located. You said just give us by borough, just so we understand where they are, because that was our sense that in fact we're getting.
And we should ask that in the letter, and we should ask the children in the school in the letter and say, you know, we just have a lot going on.
I know it's an appalling thought, but Jesse, shouldn't this be foilable? If somebody foils DHS for locations, do they have to issue them? Do we know?
We might grow old with gray hair before they.
I know that, but
yeah, I mean, listen, you know,
there's a PR play here too.
There was actually a recent report, a very good press article. I can track it down. Actually, Jessica Chait sent it around, that had a really interesting heat map of showing all these locations. I'm sure it's out of date by now a little bit. It's only been 6 months, and they're rapidly opening places. You know, we can do our research. I agree with Jeffrey that we're talking about 2 different things. I think Joe's letter, I think we're set on an idea for what Joe has raised here tonight, and I think we should go ahead and put that as new business at full board, and that can be done. I think the other topic about saturation, about locations and all of that, I think we really need to do our homework. And I think, you know, and understanding, you know, what that, you know, not just our borough and things like that. I mean, CB5, I can tell you right now, CB5 has many more than we do right now, right? So, like, I just want us to be clear, like, and, you know, from my recollection of the report, the article that I saw, places in Brooklyn and neighborhoods in Brooklyn and the Queens, you know, are spiking just as much in situations. So I think we just really need to do our homework if we want to make that as an argument. You know, that's not to say that we have certainly not experienced recently through both the serious months of COVID, and now we're seeing this uptick. And again, and it's concerning. And I think I agree, operationally wise, Maria's right. Operationally wise, notification wise, plan wise, Christine, you're right. There isn't a plan. And
There's no plan.
everybody is doing it. I mean, the frustration from my end, just to express where I'm coming from, is one week I get told this group of folks from City Hall is going to be managing all of the asylum seeking hotel / shelter / situations. Here's your point of contact, blah, 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 blah. They call me with a location. It's not even my district. They don't know the district, right? Then we get an email on Monday from DHS about an asylum location. So I'm like, well, what happened with that whole unit that I was just talking to last week? So, I don't mean to give them a pass, but it is,
It's chaos.
DHS said they didn't know, but they sent the notification to us. They sent the notification on Thursday. They said they didn't know, but they sent the notification. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah. So I'm happy to do the research and try to get more information about what's being, where it's being placed and how it's being placed. I do think that's separate letter. It's a separate topic. And
Definitely. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Thanks, Jesse. Alan?
Yeah, I think also it reflects a certain attitude now from commissioners and different agencies, same as what I recall Joe stating about this demolition thing. Say, oh, sorry, this is the deal now. We know what was agreed upon, but this is what we're doing now. So it just seems like these commissioners or assistant commissioners or the agencies say, we're going to do what we want, no matter what it was that we agreed upon, and thank you very much. So I think pushing back against a commissioner in this situation is certainly warranted.
Paul?
So a couple of things. Jeffrey, thanks for clarifying how we're going to process this. I'm grateful for that. And Maria, I appreciate your passion on this. I think you echo a lot of the sentiment in the room. And we're just trying to work through some logistical issues. So from what I'm understanding, we're having two letters, one on DHS protocol and one on sort of the fair share treatment of this neighborhood to others. Can I get?
No, we are not doing the fair share. There there should be some homework.
So what are the two letters?
I think we should flesh out the fair share thing a little bit more,
Right.
and not take that up as new
One letter.
business.
There is only one letter.
There's only one letter now.
One letter.
Okay.
I think the discussion unearthed that as a topic, Paul, but not as new business next week.
Right.
Okay. So the two things I might want to think about seeing in the letter. One is the Joe, that siting plan we did after the COVID crisis. Where makes sense to put people who are moving into hotels in our neighborhood. I mean, that siting plan is remarkable and could give DHS some good guidance, and maybe, like you're doing with the housing plan, do that with the siting plan.
With the radii and stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, like where are services available for people? How do people get access to that? How do we not inundate one block when there's other blocks that could have more capacity? So we present to them almost a way to say, okay, if these buses are rolling in and we have to put them someplace, we have a plan as to where it might make sense for them to go, and let's work together for siting people, as opposed to just saying, you guys keep dumping on us and we never. But we've done
It's
this.
the third homeless facility on the same block. It's the
Exactly.
third
So-
homeless facility.
But there may be other hotels in the district that would make more sense if they looked at our plan. I mean, I remember there was a great hotel down, I think it's been converted now, down on 23rd and 6th or 7th Avenue.
That was converted,
Yeah, it might have been a good, better option in where they go. So I'd suggest putting that siting plan into action. And the second thing is, I mean, I don't think we really recognize this, but the Port Authority, where these people are coming in, is in our district. That's us. We've not only feel the influx of the people, but the movement of this is through our district. It's not as if the 50 people going into a shelter someplace are just going to the Bronx.
And the intake center. And the intake centers.
And the intake center. Like, that is in our district, and we're welcoming them when they come into the Port Authority. And that's our district, our people. Sabrina is one of our prime examples, somebody who does, so maybe recognizing that the actual point at which they come into the city is in our district. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Katie?
Thanks. I just wanted to respond to what Christine was asking earlier about the numbers and about making the point about the fair share analysis and saturation. And to Jesse's point, I think you're right, Jesse, we have to do a lot of our research here. But Christine, just to answer your question, at the presentation on Thursday, they did say that for the asylum seeking shelters, that there are 52 have been opened and 1 is in our district. So that was, that was on Thursday. Those were the numbers.
Right, but we're talking about the overall numbers in our district already.
Exactly, and that's why we just have to be super clear about our number, about our.
That's
because
helpful.
we don't want to say that we have too much or we're oversaturated with the asylum seeking shelters. We have to be really clear. And as you were saying earlier, Jesse, we just have to get all of our numbers and be super accurate about what we're talking about. I think that's a great idea. That's all.
Thanks, Katie.
Dale?
I'm sorry, go ahead. My question was basically asked and answered.
Sure. Okay, so no vote. Thank you all for the discussion. Very useful. That you will be seeing a letter regarding the topic in advance of the full board, of which, like I said, we will take up as a new business item. We will debate it accordingly at the full board and take it from there. But I think this was a very useful discussion to have as we march towards the creation of that letter.
Will we see a draft at some point before the meeting?
I think, yeah, we have to, there will be a
It'll be in
draft.
the
for
Dropbox.
full board.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great.
2 other points. I know Bert had his hand up and Leslie has something also. So Bert and then Leslie. You're on mute, Mr. Lazarin.
Thank you. I'm good now. Thank you.
There you go.
Pointing that out. What I'm saying now came out of a conversation we had at BLP, Frank and I. This is not anything we're raising for any particular action that needs to be taken. It's just that we want to raise awareness for ourselves as a group, as an organization, that because of term limits, in the next 2 years, we're going to have a major changeover in people in this organization. And we're going to have many of the people who will be leaving have a wealth of experience and knowledge. And we need, as an organization, to not ignore this, not all of a sudden one day people here and the next day they're not. And it's not just one person, because this is going to happen to many people all at once. So we need to be aware of this as a group, and as we move forward, to perhaps think of ways that some of that experience, some of that knowledge that we have here is not lost and is communicated to, I hate the word generation. It may be a function of my age, but I hate to say for the next generation or the new people coming in, or because we are an ongoing group, but we have to do that.
A couple of points there. We should get confirmation. It's not 2 years left, believe it or not. There were some changes made late in the game to end term limits. The sitting member's term begins, I think I have 7 years left, frankly, that my new appointment under the term limit started under my last appointment cycle. So, if I remain as crazy as I currently am today, when I have to reapply, that is the amount of time that I have left. And we're all sort of in a similar boat. Jesse, did you have a hand up on like timeline of that?
Yeah, so what I talked about this a little bit a while ago. So here's what I have. Members appointed or reappointed on or after April 1st, 2019 would be limited to serving 4 consecutive 2-year terms, aka 2027. And that's the first tranche that we would have to really worry about. There, it goes on from there. I think the years directly after that will be the most difficult. But I will say, Bert, I'm not, and again, I don't think we need to go into a long conversation about it tonight, but I do think the sentiment that Bert is saying is that we should think about somehow, you know, some thought about maybe a way of how we want to do succession and things like that. That's all I will say, because I would not want us to be unprepared for it.
I also would say that I hope I've been trying to emphasize in a lot of the things we're doing, the idea of making sure new folks are getting involved and being a part of board development and board business, because we will have to have a pipeline in a way that we hadn't previously. Christine.
I think it would be helpful to give perspective to get from the borough president a schedule of when people would be stepping down. Because every time we have this discussion, it's like, oh, I don't know, it's 2 years, it's 3 years, it's 5 years. I mean, let's just put a schedule together and say, okay, here are the members which are stepping down, what year? And then we can see the whole executive committee perspective and go from there.
Everybody will have a countdown clock, is what you're saying? We'll have a big.
No, I mean, I think it's
website
important.
with a countdown clock for every member.
Right. Yeah, but it's important to have all of us. I mean,
that's completely reasonable, and I can get that. So let's start from there, and then
yeah,
we'll start picking
I
off.
think that just assumes, and I think we should just couch that, Jesse, and just say plainly, like, the assumption is that folks will continue to apply and indeed also be reappointed, just so that we can understand what the maximum looks like there. JD?
I think we're taking ourselves much too seriously, and the meeting is getting pretty long. I think you can also come back as a public member once your term has expired and tell all the young ones what to do and what to think.
Not what I'm talking about.
Sure, we are under 2 hours still, so I'm going to go to Leslie for the next quick bit, and I have a closing comment as well. And I guess Alan has new business. Leslie first, please.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And this is a question, I guess, before so evidently, the city council is soon to be voting on intro number 31A, which is the permanent open restaurant program that they have created. Has anyone here, supposedly it was created behind closed doors, no one knows what's in it yet. And I didn't know if anyone here has been privy to any of that, because I think some of the concern of people out there is that there are no public hearings before this particular vote, before the plan is shown publicly. I didn't know if anyone here, I haven't, I thought maybe like Christine, people who are more have seen it.
No,
Okay.
I mean, what's happening right now is the Department of Transportation. So there are two things happening. One is that there is a big fight between Department of Transportation and the Department of Consumer Affairs about who is really running the program. And the Department of Transportation, the person who was going to run the program left, and they have a job opening there to fill. And so these are the two pieces of information we have. But the intro, it's on the website or not?
Well, just really, just a bit more color on that. It's not the agencies fighting, it's that this right now, the city council legislation assigns open restaurant to DCWP, Department of Consumer Work.
And the mayor would like.
And then the mayor wants DOT.
So yeah.
To editorialize, I think DOT is actually much better. But on public hearings, Leslie, the city already adopted open restaurants permanently. This is an agency assignment and rules for design. So this is not about whether or not the program will exist. it's where it will
Correct.
exist in terms of like management.
No, I understand. I understand. These are the details now. This is like where these are like kind of,
Yeah,
not
and
all
I
the
think,
details, but it's forming some of the basis for the
yeah,
permanent
and once the
program.
legislation, I guess, to say there hasn't been public hearing, the legislation hasn't been released, like there hasn't been
Correct.
a committee has not taken it up. So once it's assigned a committee, there will be a hearing.
Well, I was under the impression, that's why I'm asking, I could be wrong, that they were supposed to vote on this beginning of November, but that might have been pushed off.
No, because the politics are that the mayor wants one thing and the city council still wants another. And I don't see how, well, first of all, for a bill to become law in the city council, a committee has to take it up. There has to be a hearing, right? Like that just will happen. So I think that they would have liked to have taken it up in November.
Right, that's what I wasn't sure. That's why I was asking if anyone else had more privy information than I did. I didn't know where we were going with that.
It's but if there are the rules, when they announce everything, they said when the rules will be discussed, and there will be a hearing on the rules. So we have to have a hearing. You're right.
Yes, I was curious if anyone knew when that was. Okay, that's all. So I mean, no actions or anything. It was more.
I have no doubt we will be talking about it once it becomes
Public
at the
yeah.
council.
Thank you. Thanks,
Alan.
Christine.
Hi, so this takes in the open streets and also the bathroom task force. There's a comment made, there was something that came up at today's meeting about maybe Bert or Frank could address this, maybe not now or at some future time, that the SLA has a requirement that you need to have a certain number of bathrooms per customers. And that affected primarily people on the inside. But now if the outdoor becomes permanent, they may have to redo the numbers on that so that if you have outdoor and indoor, you're going to have more bathrooms, which may have to be on the outside, which would put some pressure on the streets to possibly put bathrooms in the parking lanes, as we were trying to do at some point. So this is just for a future look. Perhaps, maybe Bert or Frank could look into whether if that's a real ruling that SLA is going to have to come up with, and then maybe we could use that to get some public bathrooms out on the street.
Alan, you don't want porta potties? You don't want porta potties up and down 8th Avenue? Is that?
I don't think they're looking for porta potties, but if the restaurants are going to have to provide bathrooms for their outdoor customers,
I think,
and have to kick in some funds for that, maybe we could use that to get some public, because they're going to have to be public bathrooms.
I guess a useful flag for SLA considerations and BLP considerations, and then obviously the public bathroom task force that's ongoing on all sides there. So thank you for raising that, Alan.
And ACES is included. Don't leave ACES out on that. We're in there.
That's fine. Just a quick shout out at the Shed right now. Highly recommend going to see Straight Line Crazy. I would call all of us Curvy Line Crazy. And so if you do have a chance, I think there are still some tickets.
Sold out.
It's great.
It's sold out.
Is it sold out? Okay.
I went online
for a long time.
Well, okay, so then wait a minute.
$1,500 a ticket.
Okay. Well, then I guess it deserves a continued run, or it should find itself at another esteemed theater in our district. So
Agreed, Jeffrey, agreed.
Bring it to Atlantic.
Exactly. Anybody else? Questions? Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn, please.
Adjourn, motion, second.
That sounds like a unanimous motion to adjourn. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you all next week. Happy Halloween.
Thank you, guys.
Happy Halloween. Good night, everyone.
Bert, I owe you 2 emails. I'll send them to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Recording.